Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Chris Hayden. I'm from Fierce, and today I'm joined by Terri Clevenger, Head of Integrated Communications at Waterhouse Brands. Is that right?
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And actually, I was wondering if you could just take a minute or two and introduce yourself to our audience. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you arrived here on our couch here at Biotech Week.
That's a long
Yes.
journey.
Yes.
Terri Clevenger, Head of Integrated Communications at Waterhouse Brands. Actually, it's a fairly new position for me just this year. But my journey really started over 30 years ago, working in always healthcare, public relations, and communications, working with pharma and biotech, working with med tech, diagnostics, health IT. And I've jumped around,
Sure.
owned my own agency for a while called Continuum Health Communications, and really working with the smaller biotechs and med tech companies and CEOs and really helping them find their story.
Sure.
And then, did a stint in a big kind of financial agency, and then decided I wanted to get back to
Get back in the game.
my roots and
Yeah.
really working with those CEOs and really working on their positioning and building their reputation as they figure out what's the next step.
Yeah, I like that. I love that. We should do another interview and talk about that 35 years of experience, the things you have seen.
The things I have seen.
Yes,
Oh,
over
yeah.
that time, and just the changes, right?
True.
We talk a lot about AI in this room, and it's fascinating to think that that's only been 4 or 5 years
Right.
of conversation. So there's just been so much before that.
So true.
Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, let's jump into the questions, okay?
Yeah.
So firstly, it would be great if you could just kind of stage for us, you've been walking around the event for a couple of days now, Biotech Week. How do you see the industry evolving, and where do you think your team is most focused in driving innovation?
So I think, 2025 has been a really interesting year. You have probably heard this time and again in every interview. You have a situation where there's just great uncertainty.
Yeah,
The market is uncertain. You never know what you're going to wake up to.
right.
The geopolitical headwinds. And for us in biotech, everything from China to most favored nation,
Yep.
tariffs, et cetera. It's happening. And so I think, what we saw in 2025 is, and we've seen an inflection point, in my opinion. The first 6 months were just, I think people just buried their heads,
Yeah,
tried
I
to,
agree, yeah.
not kind of show any emotion and just move forward with what they could. Investor dollars seem to be drying up, et cetera. And then I think, it got to the point where this is the new normal.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Yep.
And so the ones that could see through that said it's time. So
Yeah.
we're beginning to see some movement.
Good.
But I think, what we try to do at Waterhouse is work with those companies who do see that vision and do want to show themselves up for the next phase.
Right.
And that means helping them to really position themselves and establish that storytelling that they need to do to all their stakeholders and building the credibility.
Yep.
And what does that all ladder up to? It ladders up to reputation.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do with these companies. And I think slowly but surely, and you might have heard it in some of the panels here, they need to move forward.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
might not be that fully integrated pharmaceutical company anymore, but it could be, what's the licensing deal and what's the exit,
Right.
If we're going to be, use the investor term,
Right.
what's the exit?
Yeah.
And what we try to do is say that might happen in 5 years, but let's start now to build it.
Right. Yeah, it takes that long.
It does take that long.
To do it successfully. It takes
Yes.
that long. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And yes, 2020. Everybody has mentioned that 2025 has been a wee bit tumultuous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. We talk about the animal spirits.
Yes. Now, your fireside chat today was a behind-the-scenes look at deal making in 2025. What was it about the Nurix and Regulus deals that stood out in today's deal-making environment? And what do you feel was your biggest takeaway from that?
So I think we really, when we decided to do this panel, we really chose two outstanding deals that kind of set the pace. It was early 2025.
Yeah.
And when we began to do some research into the deal making in 2025, while it hasn't been huge, the number has been lower, but the volume has been much bigger in terms of dollars.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Right. So, I mean, for example, I think, Sanofi acquiring Blueprint for 9.2 bill. That was huge. That kind of turned everybody on their head a little bit.
Right.
So the value is there. So the deals are happening, but it's deals with companies that have, clarity and vision as well as good science.
Yep.
And so it's funny because I don't think people are realizing that.
Right.
IPOs have been quiet except for what MapLight yesterday, but they've been quiet. And yet deals are getting done. So if you look at Nurix and Regulus, so Nurix being that $400 million licensing deal with Sanofi, and that's about their, degrader, asset and platform, and it was something of great promise. And so big pharma being where they are today and realizing the patent life that's happening in their own pipeline are looking for partners like that.
Right.
And Nurix has partnered with a number of different companies. And so that is a model that really works.
Right.
And they know how to do it. They know how to execute. For something like a company like Regulus, that's 1.7 billion acquisition by Novartis. Again, big size in 2025, but what that really was about was a single asset that had shown really good data in the phase 1/2. So they were able to, they looked at what their exits were, and that's what Brian Campion, was the BD guy at Regulus, was talking about, which is what do we do? Are we looking for a partnership? We've got one asset.
Right.
Is M&A better? And how do we execute and keep a hold of that asset in a way to grow its value and its value proposition?
Right.
And that's what they did so well,
Yeah.
so expertly, that they were able to get a deal like that from Novartis, who now has an asset that they can take forward.
Right. Exactly.
So those were why those were kind of set the pace in 2025. I think Bruce Booth with Atlas talked about that. In the first quarter it was $5 billion.
Yeah.
That shows promise.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For me, the takeaway was two companies that, again, knew their story,
Yep.
knew that they had, the right value proposition, the right positioning, not only for the company, but for the assets. And they also had the credibility and the ability to execute
Right.
upon their mission,
Right. Right.
which then brings in the right partner,
Right.
the right investor, the right acquirer.
Yeah.
And that, again, ladders up to the reputation.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. They're mature. They know what they're doing.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
There's and there's always a risk involved, but there's less risk involved with that.
Right. But they've planned it. They've known what they were doing before this event occurred.
Yeah.
And they had to.
That's great.
And it's about getting the right people around the table.
Yeah. Smart. It's smart. Now, kind of building on that a little bit, why should biotech leaders view reputation as a strategic asset?
So I think, reputation is one of those intangibles.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
You've got your science. You have to have your science.
Yep.
But it's more than that. And it's one of those, it's an intangible, and yet it could be the most valuable asset on your balance sheet.
Yeah.
And what leaders need to think about now is, how can I grow that now? How can I work towards that for that eventual deal or exit or whatever it may be? So for reputation, and what does that mean? That's kind of this.
It's a nebulous
larger
term.
piece.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good reputation, bad reputation,
Yeah.
et cetera. It's really about a few things. It's about having a strong narrative.
Right.
That's anchored in your science, but it's more than that. It has the people, the management that can execute. So there's individual reputations of your management and then coming together. It's about credibility.
Right. Yeah. That's
It's
what I
about
think of.
being authentic with your KOLs that might be your investigators. It's with your investors, with your shareholders.
Right.
It's also credibility with the patient community.
Yep.
So advocates are an absolute must. And that's a trust. And trust brings the credibility,
Yep.
and that eventually ladders up to the
Sure.
reputation.
Sure. Absolutely. I love that. So, so why is reputational pull a passion for you there at Waterhouse?
So this is something that we have really leaned in on this year, because it's really like what I just said. Reputation is a sum of all the parts.
Right.
And if we're talking about the tactics, right? So we talked about that I've done PR. That's just one tactic that builds towards reputation. And reputational pull is really, again, it's more of an intangible, but it's that feeling when you are attracting investors. So investors want to invest in you.
Yep.
Strategic partners want to collaborate with you,
Yep.
and people, even talent,
Yep.
wants to be working with you
Right.
side by side. So it's larger than that. And so a reputational pull is the way of really kind of setting the stage for your story.
Right.
And if you can do that now, as you build your asset and as you put your asset into the clinical development, then you are going to be able to achieve that value proposition that you want at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a great term. Obviously, it just
Yeah.
makes me think gravitational pull.
Well,
and it makes,
yes,
and you're
exactly.
pulling those, naturally you're pulling those people towards you because of your competency and credibility.
And it's not a reputation push.
Right. Right. Exactly.
In PR, especially in PR,
Yes.
we're always trying to push reputation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work.
No, it's such a fine line.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a hard, that's why I don't envy PR people. It really is such a hard pull, and it depends on your clients too, like,
It does.
Yeah.
So, in fact, I was just in a panel where they were talking about the press release.
yeah.
And, half the time they don't want to do the press release. But someone seems to think, oh, that will help the stock price tomorrow. It's not about that. Or when your board says to you, as we're building our vision and working and executing our mission, we need awareness. That doesn't really necessarily mean PR.
Right.
It means build that reputation,
Right. Exactly.
which can be done in many ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, that's kind of another interview.
Yes.
So, it's another interesting topic, though. It's a fascinating
is.
topic.
Yeah.
So and I think I have a feeling I know the answer here, but we've been asking everybody, the biotech week, we end tomorrow. Everybody's walking out the door here. What's one piece of advice or insight that you would like to have everybody walk away with?
Start with the end in mind.
Yeah, I like that.
Because, it's really about playing that long game.
Yeah, it is.
And you don't want to be short-sighted. So if you're starting with the end in mind, you're looking at, okay, from the beginning, who do I want to gather around me that's going to help me move forward, help the company move forward,
Right.
that's going to gain that immediate trust and credibility among all of our stakeholders.
Right.
It's about, so it's the people around you, it's the talent, it's who's going to be, and there's a great panel yesterday, who's going to be right there with me as my banker,
Right.
as my lawyer. This is a group that needs to jump into action when we're ready.
Right.
So it's really starting with the end in mind. So if you're doing an acquisition deal, it's about being bought, not being sold. If you're doing a licensing deal, you want to be pursued.
Yep.
You don't want to be pushing it.
Right. Right.
And there's a lot of people here that are in BD.
Yep.
And you're going to have a lot of sitting at the table and them being rejected.
Right.
But it's about being pursued.
Right.
And so I would say start with the end in mind, and see about that trust and credibility. And if I can also just quickly talk about something that I felt strongly about, the company Sarepta, and working in Duchenne. Right now they are dealing with some issues, obviously, but That is a company from the very beginning that worked so hard with the patient community and the medical community that from the very beginning, they built such trust that to this day, when there's been, some adverse events with, some patients, there's a patient community out there that's not going to let go.
Right. That is, yeah.
And that's about trust and credibility and having a reputation of being transparent,
Yep.
but
100%.
also being behind this group 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, transparency, it means so much.
It does.
And it's for some reason, it's such a hard hurdle to get over for a lot of these companies. So yeah, I think it's a great, another conversation. I think you should come back and we'll do this again.
I would love to.
Well, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today. I
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.